no such aspirations, but I know Jim Ross was one of the associate deans, and Terry, I don't know who was associate, I think Jim was associate dean of undergraduate education, and Terry would have been graduate education, I would assume. But anyway, at the time we had a PhD program called Interdisciplinary Studies. We don't have that anymore. And he was also director of the PhD program in Interdisciplinary Studies at the time. And then when I started to get doctoral students, that's when I really came to know him extremely well, because it seemed like Terry was a mentor to every one of my doctoral students, just about. As you will see, a lot of the students who have written remarks and a lot of the students that will speak today were actually my doctoral students, but they will tell you how much Terry meant to them as they went through their programs. And I think I kind of pushed all the worries off to Terry. You know, come see me when you got your work done. But in the process of having to worry about your work and make mistakes and having other kinds of concerns, see Terry. And because the good thing about it was that he would push them in ways that I wouldn't. You know, they would show up and meet with him, and the next thing I know, you would get substantial progress, because he had that way of saying, what are you going to do next? Or reading something and say, I'm sorry, this is just not good enough, we need to do this over. And so there was just student after student that were actually my doctoral student that Terry became a mentor. And I'm not sure how that happened, because he had to be unusual to be in one department and yet mentoring not just 1, 2, 3, or 4, but literally, you know, 8, 9, 10 students in another department. I could name at least 7 or 8 of my own students that he served as a mentor to while he was on the faculty, and also associate dean in the college. And I remember, because when he retired, we were down in room 2, he asked me to speak at his retirement. And the thing that I wanted to emphasize to everyone, that he was such an outstanding mentor to students across this college that we would miss him in a number of ways, but I remember saying that the students who had not yet arrived would miss him the most, because they would come into a college where he would not be here, and they wouldn't even know what they were missing. But you will see from individuals who will testify today exactly what they did miss, because they were able to actually work with Terry to experience his mentoring, and it literally changed their lives and changed their careers. I don't want to even speculate as to who would not have finished had it not been for Terry. But I would probably get a lot of amens. And then, of course, as he worked with my students and we became closer and became friends and colleagues, there were things that I left to them, because there's a cabin somewhere up in Wisconsin where Terry and some of my students would meet, and they said, well, do you want to come? I said, no, I don't want to get caught up there with this group. Because I have no idea what will happen. And I never saw it until this year, when I went to Madison when Gloria Latson Billings, she retired, and Stafford drove. And he drove me. I think there was floods up there, so I couldn't really go to the place. But he took me on high and said, that's the place where we used to meet. And I said, well, I've seen enough. I can't touch it, but that's all I need to know. And I understand he's about to sell the place, so I may never get to go there, which was my wish, never to be there. But this whole college campus as well came to know Terry as a wonderful scholar. In fact, a fearsome scholar, at least for my students. They would give him their work, but with a great deal of trepidation. Because it's like, we don't know what we're going to get back, but we do know this: it's going to be honest and it's going to be forthright. He is not going to cuddle you. He's going to make sure you know exactly what are the strengths of your work and what are the weaknesses. And if you need to start over from scratch, he'll tell you you need to start over from scratch. So we all came to love Terry for his sacrifice, his devotion, his willingness to give of himself to other faculty and other students. And I always thought he retired much too soon. I was just beginning to work with him, and I had more students I had students after that needed him more than the students who actually were able to finish under him. And so I had to take on some of those responsibilities. But I had quite a few at the time, and he helped with all of them. He has an outstanding legacy in this college and will always be remembered. For those of us who came to know him and to appreciate his work in evaluation in Searcy. He was in Searcy when I was a graduate student. It took me a while before I got over to Searcy. When I came back on the faculty, I remember Bob and I served on the college exec committee. Then I came to know Hastings and Gordon Hoke and others who were in Searcy to get a good sense of how important that center was, bringing in a lot of people from across the globe into this campus, very outstanding intellectuals and visiting scholars. And that's an area of the college that I got to know later through Terry and through Gordon Hoke and others. But they left their mark on this college, and I think we all feel that we have, evaluation became iconic in this college, and the whole world knew just how important it was, and we know that. We are beginning to rebuild, and we will continue to rebuild. We will always have an outstanding unit in evaluation because it's what the college, it's the college's DNA. And thanks to Terry, as well as Stake and Hastings and Gordon Hoke and others for that legacy. Legacy we will continue. So welcome, and we all miss Terry, but we all, I had a friend who loved to quote Dr. Seuss by saying, don't cry because it ended, but laugh because it happened. And we all will laugh and have a great deal of joy because Terry meant so much to enriching our lives and the legacy scholarship of the college. Thank you.
I was one of Jim's students. The title is Some Still Do. When Kafka advised that a book must be an axe for the frozen sea within us, I don't imagine he meant a didactic book of calcified academic jargon. No, to generate warmth and affinity within and among today's neoliberal, narcissistic individuals requires the gifted storyteller who opens us to new imaginaries, new ways of being in the world, being with the dying, being one with all of it, always already entangled interaction. Terry Denny remains a gifted storyteller for those of us who read his words and for those of us fortunate enough to carry his influence. Still, I'm haunted by what to say about Terry. I recall my discomfort when talking with him. Recognition in the room. I tell my teacher education students that while I care about them, my ultimate audience is their future students. What do I want Terry to know about his influence on my work with my students? One night a dream of my visit to Champaign in 1981. Shelley takes me to the College of Education where we encounter Terry. They do this Detroit banter and tell of their shared past as public school teachers. Then it's 1982 or 83 when I read Terry's Some Still Do evaluation report. A window opens to the possibility of storytelling scholarship. Later I take Terry's evaluation course. Wish I could remember what the assignments were. All I recall clearly is how much I wanted to write beyond the platitudes I might get by with in other courses. He demanded more. Like you said, right? From within a space that had me driven to work, to explore the assumptions hidden from view. It's now a rainy Sunday morning, and thoughts of Terry show up as I read about the much misrepresented Great Society and flash back to 1968, my work in southern Utah as the secretary for an Upward Bound program. Then years later, my return to direct that same program. Another dreamscape awakens traces of Terry's influence across 35 years, with Simon and Garfunkel singing, "Hello Darkness, my old friend." I write a storytelling dissertation with Navajo and Hopi people who flipped the script by illuminating their successful negotiation of higher education. For my first professor job in Cleveland, I teach students who want to be storytellers. They've lobbied successfully for the addition of a qualitative research track to their doctoral program. Some of us become Cleveland jazz freedom fighters, and among our jams is Collaborations, a journal of education that requires that all articles be collaboratively written stories. Years later, invited to give a job talk at Northern Arizona University by Melvin Hall, that we'll hear from later, I invite Noreen Sakiestewa,